7 o'clock, I'll call the meeting back to order. Again, welcome this evening. We have 6 public hearings this evening. First one tonight, application CUP-02-22, Faith Recovery Treatment Facility, Resolution R-13-22. Principal Planner, Ms. LeDuc, and the applicant.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the application and then turn it over to Reverend Hall. Reverend Travis Hall, representing Youth Challenge of Hampton Roads and Faith Recovery, has applied for a conditional use permit to use an existing camp with a conference center and other facilities for a faith-based recovery ministry. The property is located at 3700 Ropers Church Road and is the site where the McKemmy Woods Camp and Conference Center was operating. The parcel is approximately 275 acres in size, zoned C1, and is adjacent to the Diaskin Reservoir, I-64, and several parcels zoned A1. The application was reviewed by all county reviewing agencies, as well as VDOT and the Health Department. Staff worked with the agencies in drafting the 10 conditions in Board Resolution R-13-22 before you this evening. The Planning Commission considered this application at their meeting on March 21st and voted 8-1 to forward an unfavorable recommendation on the application to the board. Like I said, Reverend Hall is here tonight, would like to address the board, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hall.
Yep, see it? Mouse is over by the words. Yep, you should be good to go.
Right here? Just click it right anywhere. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hathaway, and members of the board. Just want to say thank you for the opportunity to kind of share our vision and proposal for McKemmy Woods. Again, I'm Travis Hall. I'm the executive director at Faith Recovery. And we can get this thing to work. Here we go. I'd kind of just like to start this evening by just saying that we're in the business of helping people. And if you pay attention to the news, there's too many moms that are losing sons to drug overdose, too many kids that are losing their dads to drug overdose. And it's really easy to look at someone's behavior and place a label on a person without really understanding why that person is making the choices that they are. People don't see the hurt, they just kind of judge the behavior. And the stigma that's attached to addiction is very real. And the reason I put these pictures up is because while people are accountable for their choices, we believe that to God every person has high value and is worthy of redemption, and we believe that the grace and love of God can step into a life and make tremendous change. If I were to ask you to look at the picture and point out those in the picture that have struggled with addiction and are in recovery, and those that have not, I would suspect that you would have a challenge being able to do so. You probably just see sons and daughters, moms and dads, you see families. And the fact is that everyone in this picture has struggled with addiction and is now in recovery. They are all graduates of our program and their families now doing well. They're good employees, some are business owners, some own homes, some are making great contributions to their family and their community. And these aren't what we call dregs of society. These aren't bad people. They're actually good people that were hurting and once able to kind of get free from the grips of addiction, they were able to really find their purpose in life and pursue the destiny that God has prepared for them. And of course, we understand the concern with around this issue, but these concerns are a lot of times rooted in misunderstandings. And so tonight, hopefully, we hope to clear up some of those misunderstandings and give you the information that you need to make the right decision for New Kent County as a whole. Founded in 1979, Youth Challenge of Hampton Roads, now Faith Recovery, we've rebranded, has served the Hampton Roads region for 43 years as a faith-based ministry that provides 12 months residential care for people struggling with addiction. The National Institute of Health states that there are 23 million people in the United States that are struggling with addiction. And those are those that actually admit it. There's probably much more. But of those, 75% report not receiving any treatment. And in many cases, it's because there's a lack of program availability and the high cost. And this is where we feel a unique niche in that we provide long-term care at a very affordable cost. And there are many programs popping up all around. There's a lot of what we call medically assisted treatment programs, Suboxone clinics, methadone clinics, where people report every day to get their medication. There are some outpatient programs. There are obviously several 28-day programs within a 50-mile radius, but our faith-based program offers residents a full calendar year to establish foundational relationship with God, learn and apply recovery principles, heal emotionally, and develop character and integrity, which happens over time. That's not something you read in a book. That's not something you learn in the classroom. That's something that has to be developed. And so those that complete our full program finish with 12 months of continued sobriety. They are employed. They've saved money. They have housing available and ready to move into, and they've established a strong support network outside of the context of inside of our program for continued support and accountability. So they have a strong foundation, and they're set up about as best you can set somebody up for continued success. Our men's program leadership, and there's been some questions about our qualifications, so I just kind of wanted to touch base on that. Brent Griffin is actually our contracted clinical supervisor. He oversees Connor Yeomans, who's our licensed professional counselor in residency, who also is our program manager. He's a licensed substance abuse treatment practitioner, and he's listed on our application actually for licensing with the state. But he does oversee the counseling portion of our program with Connor. Connor Yeomans is our program director. You see his qualifications there. John Paul Thorne is our intake and curriculum director. He's got a bachelor's degree, and he's going to touch on the intake stuff, and he'll share more of that with you. Our men's home director, John Casey, is degreed with a degree in Christian ministry. He's a certified peer recovery specialist. And Mike Philippum is our reentry mentor, working with those that are in the transition phase and trying to get things set up. And he's been around us for 30 years. He's very familiar with how the program works and our guys, and really works well with them. So we've got a qualified staff. We're equipped, and we know what we're doing. So there's been a lot of questions, and want to clear up for you our intake procedures and how we vet people, and also our program and some of how we handle dismissals, and obviously the licensing that there's been some questions about. But in order really to best do that, I thought it'd be best to hear it from the two individuals that do that on a daily basis, so they can speak clearly and concisely to what we do. So John Paul Thorne is our intake coordinator. He's going to come and briefly explain that process, followed by our program director, who's going to go over our program dismissals, and then I'll be back up.
Thank you.
Good evening, sirs and lady and ma'am. My name is Jean Paul Thorne. I am the teacher, and I am the intake coordinator for Faith Recovery. As a teacher, I'm very confident, very bold, very expressive. Well, I'll admit a bit of nervousness here. But here, I'm not much for titles. I'm not much for accolades, but for the sake of clarity and for qualification, I'm going to go ahead and share them with you. As I said, my title is intake coordinator. What qualifies me to do so? Let me share that with you. First of all, I've been working in recovery for 20 years of experience. That goes along with me being a Christian counselor by degree, along with studies in modern therapeutic approaches, with several years of study in mental health issues as well. And I continue my education toward my master's of addiction. Adding to this, I have hundreds upon hundreds of hours teaching, mentoring, coaching, and counseling individuals in either recovery or active addiction. Additionally, I have worked alongside clinical therapists, for example, Genesis Counseling, to learn the process of assessing mental health issues. In addition to that, I am intimately familiar with all the different types of recovery by either study, involvement, or partnership. I have a thorough knowledge of the various 12-step programs, intensive outpatient programs, residential programs of all kinds I have a knowledge of, whether it's short-term, long-term, faith-based, secular, or clinical. Also, I personally and Faith Recovery have a long-standing rapport and relationship with courts all across the peninsula. Judges, prosecutors, and attorneys I have rapport with. In fact, I'm even able to go inside jails and interview candidates for our program when the occasion occurs. I have a thorough understanding of the legal process and criminal charges from both sides, to be honest. I have the capacity to discern between activity that is criminally motivated as compared to activity that is fueled by substance abuse. And lastly, and this is the one I just previously alluded to, I add this for good measure because it's a crucial element to all the rest. I was an addict for almost 20 years. I've known institutions, jails. I've known homelessness. I've known all the struggles that addicts can have, which means that I also understand the inner workings, the mindsets and the motives of all those I interview with insight, perception, and comprehension. Now, that part I've read. I've taken notes on my vetting process, but I've been doing it so long, I've got it honed down to a science. So I speak better when I speak freely. It's going to be more organic. So I'm simply going to share my long-term process that I have honed over many, many years. First of all, I'd like to just completely dispel any misconception about the looseness of who comes into our programs. We are not simply a recovery program. We are a recovery discipleship program. So that in and of itself means that we are doing dual things. We're engaging those in recovery tools and healthy living, but we're also inviting them into a faith-based walk. We want full, free, complete, fulfilled, purposed people to come out the other side of our program. And so with that said, we're selective in our process. Everyone who comes to us comes through standard means. They're either going to contact us directly. They are themselves in the throes of addiction. So they're going to contact us either through phone call or come to our door. They direct them to me. Sometimes it's a loved one or a pastor or a church or a wife or someone else. Or I get letters or phone calls from jail through attorneys and people who want to come into our program. So let me start with the people who contact me directly. There's always a 3-step process that I follow. And the first step of that process, though it's informal, is still very thorough. Like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. I know what to look for. I know what to ask. From the moment I'm in communication with an individual, I'm assessing immediately drug history, drug use, what is their familiarity with programs, what other programs have they been in, what do they understand about the recovery process. I'm beginning to assess in all of these things. I'm asking them questions about their relationships. I'm asking them questions about everything that I have over 20 years assessed to get a general picture, not just of their drug abuse, but their whole picture of whether they are ready, willing, and broken enough to even be in a program like ours. And here's what I have to say about that. I lose many right after that one. That many don't even make it past that first step for 2 reasons. One is simply because I can tell they're not ready yet. So I will refer them to different programs. But some simply don't want what we have to offer. It's very intense what we have. I jokingly say this all the time. We're the Navy SEALs of programs. We're a boot camp, a school, and a monastery all rolled into one. And I'm very clear in explaining what we do to every individual who comes to me. I want them to know wholeheartedly what we're offering, and I want them to come not with no disillusionments, every expectation that I can possibly give them to make an informed decision about what we offer. If they simply want recovery, I refer them to any other programs. We want men who want help, who want more than just recovery, and who want a faith-based approach. Who are with us for both recovery and discipleship. So if they make it past that first part, then we do the application process. This is simply the same thing in a more formal sense. Everything that I've done informally, I'm now doing formally. So I have an application, and that application simply allows me to check off every crucial element that I need to get a good assessment of a candidate for our program. Just briefly, like I said, don't want to bore you with a lot of details, but I want to be as clear as possible simply for the sake of confidence in what we're doing. So this application goes over everything from living situation to support system. I ask questions about who's in their life, their family members, what other individuals we may need to know about who they are connected to. And I do that also backing it up by sometimes family members or loved ones who can help give me a greater picture of the individual that I am vetting. So then beyond that, I talk about their religious background because we're a faith-based program. I want to know that they are at least open to faith-based principles. I talk about their work history. I want to see what skills they have, what they're bringing to the table when it comes to an understanding of responsibility and self-discipline. I go on to ask them about their criminal history, probation, any upcoming court dates, if they have any at all. And at this point, I'll pause. I use online resources to back up. I want to make sure they're truthful about what they're telling me. So I use online resources to see that what they're telling me is in line with what I have on this application. And again, as I've said before, I assess, based on any criminal history whatsoever, a discernment, which I'll point out at the end of this. But I'm asking about all of these questions, and I'm backing it up by online validated resources like Been Verified or Courts US. But I ask them about their medical history. I ask them about their mental health issues they may have. I ask them about any psychological issues they may have had. By the end of it, their drug history, that's an obvious one. Drug history, drug use, and their time in recovery. So again, I don't want to get too pointed, right? I'm not vetting you guys for the program, but I want to say that we're very, very thorough. And it comes with experience and knowledge and understanding of who we want in our program and the selectivity of it. You know, at this point, I lose many. If I accept only those individuals who have met all the criteria to the best of our ability. Any red flags along this path will keep a person from our program. A history of violence, a criminal history that's too extensive or I can tell is easily discernible, distinguishable from an addiction-fueled criminal history. Also, any sexual deviancy or violations criminally. And also, if I may, simply because they're outside the scope of our care, it's not just about their criminal history that might red flag them and disqualify them from our program, but it's also any certain physical ailments. Some people just physically can't do our program or have mental health issues beyond our scope of care. And again, for all of these, I will refer them to other programs that are more appropriate for their needs. Last but not least, even if a person passes all of those phases, if I still feel they're not ready for our program, I won't accept them. I'll again refer them to another program. So with that said, I just want to thank you for letting me speak. And I hope that I have left you with the confidence that our vetting process is duly diligent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Connor Yeomans. I'm the program director at Faith Recovery. Like John Paul, I will just kind of qualify myself and let you know what qualifications I have to sit in the position I do. So I do have a master's degree in clinical mental health and substance abuse counseling through the state of Virginia. I am a certified substance abuse counselor as well as I'm a counselor in residency, meaning that in about 11 months I will be a fully licensed professional counselor in the state of Virginia. What I'm here to talk to you about is the program structure and give you a brief overview of what that looks like. I'm also going to talk to you about our current demographics and what our success rates are. I'm also going to talk to you about something that we have heard be a point of concern from the community, which is what does the dismissal process look like? And then finally, I'll talk about the licensing process that we are starting to go through. So in short, what can men expect when they come into our program? They can expect a lot of structure. So days begin at 6 a.m., lights out at 10 p.m. The first 8 weeks of our program are a foundational phase. During that phase, first thing in the morning, they're getting up, they're making their bed, they're starting to learn life skills that they've probably lost along the way that are going to help them in their recovery. After that, they're attending daily chapel. They're going to biblical recovery curriculum classes. They're also attending 12-step meetings during the middle of the day. In the afternoons, they're coming to intensive outpatient group counseling with me. They're having group recovery discussions, community groups in the evenings to discuss in-house and disciplinary issues. There's study halls, like I mentioned earlier. There's AA meetings, there's NA meetings. In this first phase, we begin to start to talk about aftercare planning, peer recovery groups, celebrate recovery. Once individuals make it through those first 2 months, we start to work into a phase that's called life application. In this phase, this is where the rubber begins to meet the road. This is where they begin to learn how to balance life and work. And so every individual within our program is given a position. We have a number of micro enterprises, such as a thrift store. We have a couple small construction crews. We obviously have a kitchen in-house. We have laundry. And so we find things that are best suited for the skills of those individuals, and they're placed in those positions. They typically spend about 4 to 5 hours a day doing those work positions. And for the most part, they're continuing to do the exact same things they were doing in the first phase, with the exception of the morning classes. So they're coming to the group counseling in the afternoons. They're doing individual studies instead of the group studies they were doing in the mornings. They're working on spiritual gifting, self-directed search testing. In the evenings, they're doing money management, Bible studies, Wednesday chapel attendance. They're continuing to use 12-step fellowships. They're doing individual mentoring, individual counseling, and of course, continuing to work on their aftercare plan. The final phase, phase 3, is the transitional phase. And this is the last 4 months of the program. Where we currently are, we house the men in our facility, and they do that phase on site there, meaning they live there, they find and maintain regular employment, they continue to abide by all of our rules and regulations, drug testing, continuing to attend meetings, individual counseling. For the purposes of McKeamy Woods, if we were granted this conditional use permit, the final phase would look a little bit different. What we would do is we would collaborate with recovery housing in the communities where these individuals come from. John Paul didn't really touch on it, but we have men from all over. We have men from Newport News and Williamsburg and Hampton and Chesapeake, Fredericksburg, all over the state. We got a couple guys from Colorado. And so we're going to work with them. We're going to find a recovery residence in their area, and we're going to help them transition back into their community so they can become, active and productive members of their society. So now I'll move on to talk about demographics. What does the average person in our program look like? Our average resident age is about 34 years old. 85% of the men in our program are walk-ins, meaning they voluntarily came into our program, and about 15% are court referred. Currently, we have 15 men in the program, and 1 is court referred to us. Now, in terms of success rates, that's always a very a sticky word to use when you're talking about recovery. But in terms of success rates, the way we can quantify it is this. 71% of our residents remain in our care for 30-plus days. 20% complete our 12-month program. Now, if you don't know a whole lot about recovery, you say, well, only 20% complete your program. That's not a very good success rate. Here's the reality. In 2019, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration did a study. And what they found was 42% of those entering treatment for substance use disorder complete treatment. And that's a 30-day program. So you can see our rate at 30 days is 29% higher than that. Obviously, something that is of concern to residents is how do we handle dismissals? What happens if someone leaves? So I'm going to go over a couple different scenarios about when people leave our program, what it looks like. So the first scenario I'll talk about is the small percentage of our residents who come into our care with the intention of only completing a 30-day program that we have. When their course of treatment ends, they're required to complete an additional 2 months of aftercare in which they return weekly for counseling, AA, NA, and insight groups. The next group of people would be individuals who have behavioral or mental health issues beyond the scope of care that we offer. But I think it goes without saying 90% of people who deal with substance use issues also deal with mental health issues. Mental health really is the underlying cause of substance use. And so we deal with that. The vast majority of people with substance use disorder have various degrees of anxiety and depression. Now, sometimes they have mental health issues that are beyond that. The vetting process, which John Paul explained, is very thorough, and we don't let people in who we believe are beyond our scope of care. But there are points in time as men stay with us that it becomes more apparent that they need a higher level of care. And in those situations, what we do is we work with the appropriate entities within the community, other local recovery facilities, and we work on getting them transported to those facilities where they can receive a proper level of care. So that's going to be Riverside Behavioral Health, Pyramid, Safe Harbor, Virginia Beach Psych, a number of other facilities. The next group of people leaving the facility could be residents who commit to a 12-month program, but at some point during the duration of their stay, life circumstances pop up. Family issues, health issues, personal issues prevent them from completing. In this scenario, staff's going to work with the resident and the family to develop an appropriate aftercare plan, meetings, counseling, support to ensure their continued success and sobriety. And the final one I want to talk about is a violation of program rules. So there's going to be two categories here, right? We're going to have the walk-ins. If a walk-in violates our program rules, family is contacted, or whoever they have a release of information for is contacted, and transportation is arranged either through the program or through their loved ones for the residents to leave campus. When they leave, we give them recommendations for other treatment facilities that may better serve their needs. In terms of court referrals, every court referral we have is designated a probation officer who works their case. So in the case that someone is court mandated and they are in violation of program rules and are being dismissed, the probation officer in charge of the resident's supervision is contacted and made aware of the program violation and dismissal status. At that point, the probation officer advises program staff of how they would like to handle the situation. In almost all cases, probation officers request the resident report to the probation officer on their own recognizance after dismissal. In this case, we coordinate with the family to pick them up, or we transport them to their home with recommendations to probation and to the resident for other treatment facilities and further levels of care. The final thing I'm going to talk about is licensing. And so right now we are in the process of working with a consultant to get our license as a DBHDS PHP level 2.5 facility. In layman's terms, that's essentially a day treatment facility in which we would provide 20 hours or more of clinically intensive programming per week. The reason we feel it's important to obtain licensing through the state is because it's going to allow our program to offer a professional counseling component, more comprehensive care, a higher level of oversight from the state. It, of course, will allow us to accept insurance and hire more qualified staff. And really, ultimately, the name of the game for us at the end of the day, whether licensed or not, is to best serve the people that we serve. And so we believe getting the licensing is going to allow us to do just that. And so that's all I have, and Travis is going to get up and finish this up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, so hopefully that kind of gives you, I know it's a little thorough, but I just wanted to make sure that we had a full understanding, because I know there's a lot of questions about how we do things, and so hopefully that does clear some of that up on the front side. Obviously, and just so briefly, I want to touch on the property itself. Obviously, we want to relocate to McKinney Woods out of the downtown Newport News area. It's an urban downtown area with a lot of temptations, and moving guys into a more rural environment. There's a lot to be said about taking somebody out of their environment and to a more rural location that's more conducive to emotional health and emotional healing and spiritual growth. The relocation, the licensing, the rebrand has all kind of been part of a strategic plan we've been kind of working for a number of years to be able. When I took over in 2015, we just really looked at where we wanted to go, and all this stuff is just kind of coming to a head at once. And so we We did a search. We found the property. It's a beautiful property. New Kent is as you well know, is a very beautiful community, and the property actually fits perfectly for our mission. And so we met with the representatives of the Presbytery of Eastern Virginia, and they expressed they only want the property to be sold to another Christian ministry. They liked our mission, and we're actually glad to see us being able to kind of come in and take the property over. And so we got an agreement with them. We've been approved for financing, and all that stuff's worked out. So, oops, how do I go backwards? I can't. So the property itself, you can kind of see on the picture on the left, the property itself actually provides a substantial buffer for privacy of our residents as well as those living nearby. It's surrounded by woods with facilities. Kind of, you see the clearing there in the middle. That's kind of where the facilities are. You see the inset there on the right. This is where we're going to be doing all of our program operations out of. So you can kind of see where it's kind of in, out of the way, plenty of privacy, plenty of buffer for noise or anything like that may be an issue. The facilities are already there. They have lodging, kitchen. There's plenty of place for offices and all those types of things, as well as the therapeutic benefit of the property itself with recreation, being in nature, and doing some gardening and other things like that. The main lodge we will obviously be using for kitchen and dining room facilities. You can do that too, can't you? And downstairs we'll have to renovate downstairs for offices and classrooms. The Laurel Hall is already, as you can see down here by the diagram, is already set up for dorms. The dorms are already there. And so that's where the main lodging would take place. There's a great room where we'll separate and do some other things for the guys to have some activities inside. Jordan Lodge currently is also available for dorms. What we're going to do initially with that property, though, is use it for classrooms and counseling rooms until we complete the renovations downstairs, and the lodge needs quite a bit of work. So that's just kind of briefly on the facilities. The Eco-Eternity Forest is, if you're not familiar with it, it's an area of the property that the Presbytery had for like it's similar to like a cemetery where people could memorialize their loved ones. And we've discussed this with the current owners, and we are going to honor all of the current leases. We're going to maintain the forest back to its beauty and the way it should be maintained. And at some point, we're even going to open it back up for new leases for those who may want to memorialize their families in that way. I've got experience as a family consultant at a cemetery, and I perform funerals as an ordained minister, and so we're happy to be able to provide that service to the community. The camp really has meant so much to so many people over the years, and I've spoken to some that have been a little saddened at the fact that it's just sitting there not being used and it's deteriorating, and they're excited about the fact of the possibility of our coming in and restoring the camp to its former beauty and using the property for its intended use of ministry. But the property obviously is in need of a lot of repair. You can see here, obviously, the roof needs some attention there in the main lodge. HVAC and boiler needs. We're currently working with a local company that's going to actually donate a lot of their labor and many materials to us so we can get that done at a very low cost. Bathrooms need to be renovated. There's a lot of moisture inside that main lodge downstairs where you can just see the property's just sitting there just deteriorating. There's actually water getting inside that building. That wall actually has a crack, so we're going to have to dig in and kind of properly seal that, and so that we can stop the water problem from getting in, replace the floor, all the repairs that the kitchen needs, just to kind of give you an idea. Laurel Hall, there's some broken windows. There's been the owner has expressed there's been people just kind of staying there from time to time, trespassing on the property, doing some damage, and so there's some things that need to be repaired there. Obviously, some renovate. The upstairs dorms are great, but downstairs needs a lot of work. Jordan Lodge is mainly exterior, but you can see the deterioration there that we're going to address and renew. This house is actually right at the entrance of the camp, which we have no intention to use for any residential purpose. We're going to use that eventually for administrative offices, but we are going to clean that up so it's not an eyesore for people that drive by and get that kind of straight. But again, just to look at the program boundaries, you can see that there's a lot of concern about safety and all those types of things. And we want to be good neighbors, and hopefully you got a better picture of how we operate and how we do things, and that eliminates some concerns. But the property design itself is what actually attracted us to it. Because of the boundaries, you've got, as I mentioned earlier, you've got all that, and then you've got the water all the way around. You've got the interstate on the other side. So it's not something that's very likely that someone's just going to get up and walk away from, especially those who are coming from either an urban or suburban environment that they've grown up in. They're not just going to take off in the woods. I mean, so it's the design, it really just makes it problematic for somebody to just walk away. Our program activities, just to give you an idea of the distance from the road, is about 0.4 of a mile from the main entrance off the road. There are some residents right there near the entrance. And then there's another group of houses down there on Moore's Lane, I think it's called, and there's another 0.4 of a mile there. So there's buffer, there's privacy, there's kind of some security within the property itself, in addition to what we're going to do with alarm systems on the buildings and all those types of things to make sure that the citizens of New Kent they feel safe. Also, one of the conditions is that we have an action plan with the sheriff, which should be in the packet that you have. An action plan with the sheriff that he's submitted, that he felt comfortable that if we abided by that plan, that would be a good action plan for safety should somebody leave the property. But again, most of those issues, when somebody wants to leave, they're gonna take the easy way and get a ride. They're probably not gonna. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but really it's very improbable that they will. So we certainly are concerned about the safety of the citizens as well as they are. And again, we want to be good neighbors. We want to come in and build trust in the community, and we're going to do what we say we're going to do. Alcoholism and drug addiction is an unpopular issue, but it's one that's in every community. It's one that communities can't really ignore anymore. It's in our faces now with all these overdose deaths. And, in New Kent County is now the fastest growing county in the state of Virginia, so congratulations there. You guys are doing a great job, and there's a lot of growth going on. With growth means new jobs, and so it's great opportunities, but that also means more people coming into your county with potential of having some of these issues that need to be addressed, and the county has a great opportunity to get ahead of the curve and have a program and a facility like this already that not just it's not just a clinical facility, but again, this is a ministry that we go beyond recovery, and it's a long-term discipleship program where we can really care for someone's needs and really set them up for society, as they transition back into society. And so that's kind of all that we've got as far as our presentation goes. I'll open it up for any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Reverend Hall. I know we all have a fair amount of questions, but I'll probably open up the public hearing because the citizens might, some of the comments that we received from them might add some more questions for that. So we'll open up the public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you. You bring the sign-up sheet, please. We have a fair amount of people signed up tonight, so I'm going to remind everybody, when I call your name, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You will be given 3 minutes to speak. Ms. Watkins will have the timer. I ask the people in the audience to be respectful to the speakers. If you are with a group, you'll be given 7 minutes. A group is a formal association or organization. So if you come up here and say you're representing Facebook, that's not going to work. So with that, let's get started. Kenneth Hodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, other council members. Appreciate the opportunity. I come here.
I'll get your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Kenneth Hodge, 7647 Cypress Drive. in Lenexa.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I come here as someone who's been involved with Faith Recovery for about 10 years. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Newport News, where I work, and Travis Hall is a member of that, and our club has been involved with them for 10 years. My wife and I have personally had their work crews at our house doing labor on 3 separate occasions, and they are the most respectful group of people that I've ever had working for me. We also are the beneficiary of having chosen my parents well, because we inherited some property in Western Virginia that these boys, young men, have been up and spent a weekend there, and to see them out in the open, away from the city lights of Newport News, it was amazing. I found them extraordinarily trustful, and I would not doubt for a minute that I would welcome them, any of them, into my home. I believe this because of the faith-based process that they're using, where they're working to fill a hole in their lives. I have extended family members that have been through multiple recovery programs that have failed because that hole in their life has never been filled. And so that's what Faith Recovery does. It fills that hole and gives them an opportunity to be fulfilled. There will be others coming up here, and I am glad I had an opportunity to speak from someone who's had experience with them and knowledge of the program. The biggest thing that people become afraid of is not knowing what's going on. And fear of the unknown is the biggest. I have no fear of what I know that these group of people are capable of doing, and I'm looking forward to having an opportunity for them to be up here as opposed to down in Newport News. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Terry Peterson.
Hi, my name's Terry Peterson. I live at Stage Road in Barhamsville. And when the initial application was first made for the conditional use permit, Faith Recovery said that they were tax exempt, nonprofit, and they would be a residential ministry for 12 months for men and women 18 years and older. Now it's only men. I guess they forgot the women, dropped them out. The immediate plan was to move the 15 to 20 residents from Newport News and the campus staff that would live on the, I guess, McKimmy Woods, 24/7, strategically placed in the lodging area to ensure proper care and accountability. As they expand in New Kent, they want to have approximately 40 residents housed for the 12-month program. Reverend Hall stated at one meeting that it was difficult to find staff to stay 24/7 at the property. At one of the town hall meetings, he said he was working with the Fix program in King William County to develop ways for each program to benefit by leveraging their assets to support both programs. Are they both going to share this property? Faith Recovery, and the Fix in King William are both unlicensed, and they're not clinical programs. They are faith-based with no medical personnel that are used for evaluations or emergencies if anything happens. How many other programs will be permitted at the site, and where are these proposed residents coming from? Who is going to monitor exactly how many people are actually living at McKimmy Woods? What other activities are going to be planned? Are there other AA meetings that are going to be held every day? The property is currently zoned Conservation 1, which means that the land is not intended for development. It is set aside for open space, environmental protection, and wildlife habitat. On one side of the property borders Diaskin Reservoir, which is a freshwater body of water. And the C1 zoning does not preclude all uses of the area, but a change occurs only when very deliberate recognition of the environmental qualities and constraints are present. The property is 274 acres. They did mention that we're going to take care of the Eco-Eternity Forest Cemetery, which that was the first I heard that. As far as I know, the families have not been notified of the plans to sell and to have a drug rehabilitation facility located there. Youth Challenge, or Faith Recovery as they're now known, has had significant financial issues in the past, and they admit that the property on 34th Street was recently sold to the city to alleviate their debts. At the most recent meeting on Monday in Croker, whoops.
You can wrap up your sentence.
Okay. I was told that I was asking you about the women's facility on 29th Street in Newport News that closed, and I was told that it was sold, but when I checked the Newport News real estate site, it's still owned by Peninsula Youth Challenge, which was their original name. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson.
That's all I have.
Patty Peterson?
Hi, Patty Peterson, 18060 Stage Road, Lawrenceville. I just want to say, aside from all the red flags others will speak about tonight, I want to bring up the fact that they repeatedly say there are no programs like his in New Kent. Henrico East Jail, which by the way is right around the corner, has two very similar programs. One is called RISE, which stands for Recovery in a Secure Environment. Keyword there is secure. The program provides the tools needed for recovery, self-esteem, and a belief they can make their life better. It's completely voluntary. It has a mental health staff and offers GED testing if they need it. The second program offered by Henrico East is ORBIT, and that stands for Opiate Recovery Based on Intensive Tracking. This program begins with the medical detoxification. The program not only provides substance abuse recovery, but also provides life skills through a slow step-down approach. And in their fourth phase of Orbit, they can work or go home, but they have to wear a GPS bracelet. Both programs help both men and women, and Reverend Hall only wants men. SoberNation.com lists 30 places in and around New Kent. I can't read them all in 3 minutes. They are all within 25 miles, all treat men and women. They are licensed and accredited and have professionally trained staff, mental health doctors, and nurses. So in summary, there are many options if people want help. We don't need a business with no accountability and questionable financial stability. He has a failing score from charitynavigator.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson. Dawn Hall?
My name's Dawn Hall. I live at 189 Edsel Street, Newport News, Virginia. I wanted to give my view on faith recovery and hopefully put a different light on what the program does and who the students are. Yes, I am a female. I did graduate. Unfortunately, due to the death of the women's home director due to COVID complications, they had to shut down the facility, but they rehomed and got those students, the females, where they needed to go to get the help they needed. I have to read so that I do not get sidetracked due to time limitation. I have a history of addiction. I've been convicted of multiple felonies. I've been incarcerated several times and made many poor choices in my addiction. Many people only see the consequences of addiction, but do not really see the person who is struggling. Many don't want to. After many stays in jail, a few paid rehabs that let me go when the insurance paid all it would, and along with several times of trying it on my own, I just couldn't break free of the cycle of addiction. Until 1993, when I finally called the police to come get me. I was homeless again, violated probation again, and taken advantage of again. It isn't often talked about, but bad things do happen to us, too, both the men and the women. Being an addict isn't something I set out to be, but I couldn't find my way out. Faith Recovery provided that outlet for me. I wrote while incarcerated. They interviewed me and accepted me into the program, and after I served my time in February 1994, I walked through the doors of Faith Recovery, and my life changed. I changed. I had the opportunity to learn to believe in myself, to believe that I wasn't just a worthless addict as many viewed me. I wasn't just a person whose life didn't matter. I learned through the classes that Faith Recovery continues to provide today. The strict rules, the accountability, the counseling, the work detail, and so much more, how to be patient, to be kind, to deal in a healthy manner with my thoughts and emotions, to be honest even in failure. And I can be somebody who doesn't have to hide or be afraid or ashamed anymore. I met people that accepted me and encouraged me. They did not judge me by my past, and I changed. I worked hard to become respectable and respected. I've been employed with the Riverside Medical Group for 16 years now, working with and helping patients of all ages. Before that, I worked in a private practice for several years. I've also worked with Faith Recovery for many years to help those that come in like I was helped. People see me now, and they don't see the homeless, dirty, barefoot addict anymore that I once was. I have a family. I have a mother who is proud of me. I have friends. I have a house. I am not a criminal. I am not a drug or alcohol user. I am off of indefinite probation. I went through the process of having my rights restored. I work. I pay my taxes. I give. I live life, and I am blessed. I would not be who I am today without going through the program. Please consider me one of the people that Faith Recovery helped when you're making your decision today. Think of the opportunity that your answer will have to help so many whose lives are lost in the cycle of addiction today, to find their way to learn to recover while at McKinney Woods, which has always been a place of sanctuary and can continue to be so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Rob Cowling.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to come in. I can speak to this subject on a very personal note in that my family has been involved with Youth Challenge as well at, Robert Cowling, Newport News, 125 Keith Road.
Thank you.
I have used the services of Youth Challenge to assist my wife and I on several moves. We've donated many things to the thrift store because we believe in the program that they have. The issues that we have, I've seen nothing that was not stellar in their performance, their personage, how they handled themselves. I'm also a trust officer with Old Point Trust and Financial Services. I've used them numerous times for estates, moves, people in nursing homes that have to go from one place to another or downsizing. They have been the absolute best service that I could ever offer to anybody because they're always respectful. A third side of what I've done is I'm also part of the Newport News Rotary Club. I've also run a children's fishing program for 25 years that we do for 250 kids every year. This will be our 25th year. The best volunteers that I have are from the Faith Recovery Youth Challenge group. They come out, they work with us, they assist in every way possible. Very glad to do any job that is asked for. They just want to be having an opportunity to engage with the public. They've done a wonderful job. And the last status is that my uncle, who is now deceased, was a physician that dedicated his services for over 30 years to Youth Challenge, working with Troy Collier when he started the program, and I've learned that for many, many years to value their services, support their efforts, and that's why I'm here tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Callan. Terrence Campbell.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Terrence Campbell. I live in Hampton, Virginia, 226 Hankin Drive. I came into Youth Challenge, now Faith Recovery, in 1994. I was at the age of 39. I'm 67 now, and I've been clean and free of drugs ever since then. But one of the most important things that happened to me when I came through Faith Recovery or Youth Challenge is that my family was restored. I had a baby girl, was 1 year old, didn't hardly know my own baby girl. My other daughter was 6. I got restored in a relationship with one of my oldest sons. In other words, Youth Challenge Faith Recovery works. I've now been married 36 years, and I know I don't have a lot of time because there's a lot in between this that I can say. I'm just trying to give you the most important parts. My relationship with Christ. The reason why I have a relationship with Christ, the reason why I am walking in deliverance, is because of Brother Troy Collier, who came here from Arkansas and established the program. One man obedience is the reason why I'm able to stand here today. The other man obedience was Christ on the cross. Were it not for his obedience, Brother Troy would have never came to Virginia. But I'm here tonight because of someone like Brother Troy. I'm here tonight because of Brother Travis, Sister Don, I met back in '94, and my brother here. So what I'm trying to say is that we need some mercy. We need your grace to accept the proposal that's been presented to you all. We're not here to harm, we're here to recover. And Christ will definitely help you do that. I know this. But again, I had an opportunity given to me and I took advantage of it. Like I said, I came in 1994, March the 21st. And 30 days, it was the change immediately in 30 days. If I have never have met you, come to Youth Challenge, I would have went in a direction that y'all wouldn't be having a conversation with me tonight. Not a soul in here. Because I wouldn't be here on this earth. I'd either be locked up for life or I'd be dead and gone. And I'm not trying to make it sound like that's harsh because that's the life that I was living. That's the average life that any drug dealer live, any drug addict live, a criminal lifestyle. It's subject to happen. Anything is subject to happen. But by the grace and mercy of God, I'm standing here tonight with a smile on my face and joy in my heart because of a program like this. It's such a pleasure to be able to turn around and look at you all and smile. Because once upon a time, I wasn't able to do that. When I came out of the program in 1995, I became a deacon of the church. Nobody expected that of me because I got a pass. There were people who said, my nickname is Skeet. Said, Skeet say, I'll believe it when I see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Gregory Reamer.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Greg Reimer. I live at 17550 Stage Road, Lenexa, Virginia. NIMBY, oh, that's an awful term. It implies prejudice. It implies intolerance. But sometimes there are real reasons that people are concerned about having something in their own backyard, especially something that has as many broken people coming in it as Faith Recovery. It's very heartwarming to hear your story. I believe it's real. I've seen other similar stories. I have a nephew who doesn't have the same story, though, who's been through Faith Recovery types of programs, and he's a recidivist. He was even using while in the facility. So there are other stories, too, and I wish there were more like yours. But the fact is, this may be a good place. I have some questions about its managerial competence, but it's in the wrong place if it goes into our county. The very isolation that they enjoy will make it difficult for that facility to be served. The roads, Roper's Mill, as you well know, and Stage Road, as you well know, and thank you. We had a little bit of work done there. Are country roads that barely allow 2 cars to pass. I'm worried about increased traffic on that road, and there will have to be. I'm worried about people there in the facility getting medical service when they need it, because we're an isolated community. And I'm also worried about me and my family and my neighbors who are very close to that facility. A quarter of a mile or a half a mile isn't very long walking distance, and there's plenty of cover, and there's plenty of opportunities for someone who has malice in their heart. And frankly, I'm not convinced that your vetting processes that you can see into the soul of someone and tell whether they have criminal intent or just a criminal because of their drug habit. So yes, I'm concerned about those things, and I have a duty to my family and my community to make those concerns known. So I congratulate you and others like you, but only 20% leave at the end of the day, and I'm worried about what happens in between that time with the other 80. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Patty Walters.
Good evening.
Can you pull the mic down a little bit?
Good evening. My name is Patricia Walters, and I live at 3649 Ropers Church Road in Lenexa. And I'm concerned about the residents, the welfare of the residents attending the proposed faith recovery. As I know, probably everyone in this room has lost a loved one or dear friend due to addiction. But my concern is also the psychologist or psychiatric care that is needed to diagnose and treat these residences and their other illnesses. What about a physician or nurse's practitioner? You know, they need medical care, diabetes, heart health, depression, any form of medical care. Will that be available? Will there be a social worker involved? And I would also like to know who would be monitoring this program if it were to come to be. And overall, advise the citizens of the community how this program is going in outreach, so we don't feel like they're over there isolated in their own little world and we don't know what's going on. And that's a part of the problem, I believe. And I do wish very much success for those that are seeking the help that they need. But I feel like they need to have service to the whole body, the mind and their spirit, not just faith, which is huge, because I do believe in a higher power. And also, I would like to ask the question of what happened to the women's facility? Nobody's even mentioned that. So anyway, I'll leave it at that, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walters. I'll ask all the speakers when they come up here, don't be afraid of that microphone. People listen at home, so adjust it to you so everybody can hear out in the audience and everybody can hear at home. Next is Tammy McCormick.
Hi, I'm Tammy McCormick. I live at 3912 Ropers Church Road. And to be honest, I came here not intending to speak. I'm going to mimic what Mr. Reimer said probably best, is I feel like faith-based is absolutely the way to go. However, how many of these licensed clinical doctors, counselors are living on site with them? I live 4 driveways down from that facility on Ropers Church Road, and it concerns me. I have a teenage grandson that lives with me. What is the accountability? What kind of medical people are going to be on site with them 24/7? The other thing would be the small businesses in our area that might lose business based on their services that they provide to help fund their own organization. We have lots of small businesses in our county, and I think it would negatively affect them as well. So I certainly don't want to see it 4 doors down from my house. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCormick. Teresa Roundley. Rounda.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Rondi. I live at 3701 Ropers Church Road, and I live directly across the street. We all know someone with an addiction. It's touched all of us. And nobody disagrees with rehabs. But this particular rehab is my concern. Knowing what I know about McKeamy Woods, because I've worked there, I know that it can hold about 165 people. Mr. Hall has made mention of partnering up with the Fix and maybe doing, supporting both programs or to combine programs. So that concerns me. Right now we're talking about 40. But if you're partnering up with the Fix, hey, who's to say you couldn't be 165? That worries me. And I am concerned about the fact that there may not be professionals, mental health professionals, psychologists. If somebody does slip through that has a dual diagnosis like schizophrenia, and an alcohol problem, that's a 24-hour day, 7-day a week that needs to be addressed. As far as the eco-eternity forest, that is another big issue with me. There's 150 trees designated out there. And I understand that they are willing to take it over and do the maintenance and upkeep. But have the families that have people buried there been notified? Because there are several families that like to park at the main lodge and walk. Are they going to be comfortable with 40 men in a rehab? I don't know. But that was just one of my concerns. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Robert Cudley.
My name is Robert Cudley, and I live at 6709 Davis Road, Quinton, and I am a resident of New Kent County of 9 years. I have a degree from Kent State University. I grew up in Ohio, a BS in conservation, which entailed not only wildlife, plants, but also many classes in community planning and development. So from my background and living in multiple counties in Ohio and in Massachusetts, and now from Hanover County to New Kent, I personally have witnessed things happen in a community such as ours, because most of the communities that I did reside in previous were more rural like New Kent. But as I've seen in counties that don't think far enough in advance and a wide scope that they should, to allow something like this start in New Kent. I am a Christian, and being a fireman and working for Portage County Sheriff's Department Underwater Search and Rescue Team in Ohio, I have dealt with many drug overdoses and taken people to the hospital, and my heart goes out for them. But if we're going to have a place to help drug abuse, it has to be thoroughly vetted. There must be a full medical staff involved, along with doctors and nurses, to handle somebody that may sneak something in, that may have an overdose or a reaction to something that's going on at this place. One other thing, our community does not have a proper police force to handle the surge when police forces all across the country are looking for police officers to fill their spots. And at this point in time, I don't feel that we have the staff enough to handle something like this. And there is not 24-hour care. As I understand, the classes are 20 hours, but then what happens with the other 4 hours when nothing's being serviced? And people are free to come and go as they choose. And there should be a lot closer contact with a system like this that is proposed. Plus, our planning commission has already put the CUP studied, and that's it. My personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Byrd.
Hi, my name is Jason Byrd, 3820 Community Drive, West Point. I want to thank the chairman and the board for allowing me to speak today. I was raised in a divided home where my mom was a Christian who made sure the kids were always in church when the doors were open. My father was an addict. They separated when I was young. Unfortunately, I was exposed to addiction at a young age, again, which statistics show may be a higher chance that I would become addicted. In this case, it was true. At 13, I started drinking liquor with a friend of mine who would steal it from his mom when she would leave the house. At 15, I started smoking marijuana and taking some pain pills here and there. I was in the skating scene, and those two things went hand in hand. At 16, I started using stronger substances like cocaine. I had gotten in with the wrong people at the wrong time in my life. At 18 years old, I started getting heavier into opiates and other stronger drugs. Fast forwarding 4 years and being incarcerated 3 times for doing things drugs had led me to do, I become a statistic. I was stuck in a never-ending cycle of addiction and incarceration. I was 22 at this point and introduced to heroin. It quickly became everything to me. It controlled everything I did and everywhere I went. It went on like this for 2 years. Finally, I had hit my breaking point and I cried out for help. My mom helped me find a program that treated addiction, and at the time it was called Youth Challenge. I was done with being a statistic. Youth Challenge, now Faith Recovery, was a culture shock, unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. It was exactly what I needed. It stretched me and twisted me, and it broke me, but it built me back up, and it helped mold me into the person I am today. It saved my life, and if I hadn't made that choice, I don't think I would be here today. It allowed me to break the cycle of addiction for me and my family. It changed me from being a statistic to being part of a success rate. It helped me be a husband I'm supposed to be to my wife and father I'm supposed to be to my children. 2 big things I carried with me all these years since I graduated the program is attitude and work ethic. It allowed me to be who I am, where I am in my life today. I've gotten my voting rights restored, my gun rights restored, and I've obtained a concealed carry permit as well. I have a beautiful family, a beautiful home, and I landed a job with a 6-figure income. All this made possible by what I've learned from Faith Recovery. It turned me from being a statistic, life of addiction, and incarceration to being part of a success rate. Being a successful person in the community, I live in West Point right now. The program is in Newport News. If this move is made possible by the board, it will allow me to be a better opportunity to be more involved in the program. It will allow me to share my life experiences and help mold the students and be an example of what it is to be a part of a success rate and not a statistic. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Downing.
My name is Bob Downing. I live at 3931 Ropers Church Road, Lenexa, Virginia. Some of you I've talked to and some of you I haven't. But I want to start by saying, I understand that there's drug addiction. I understand there's good stories on both sides. I understand there's bad stories on both sides. I'm sure that none of the people that didn't go through this program very well are going to come up here and speak to y'all. What I want to talk about is when this piece of property came originally up for sale, it is to my understanding that it was listed for $3.2 million. I understand that the county went and looked at it. I understand that it is being sold now for $700,000. It is to my point to ask each and every one of you Board of Supervisors here, since this is a faith-based program, that means they are tax exempt. That means that the county will not get anything out of this here program for the next 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever the case might be. This is the fastest growing county in the state right now. And I sat here and listened to you guys at these meetings, and the only thing that you guys really ever do is spend money. And it is our money that you spend. And you asked each one of us citizens to put tax money into this program to make this county better. I'm sorry, Mr. Hall, but this doesn't bring any money into the county. It only spends money. So it is a cost to this county each and every year by roads, by upkeep for the around the reservoir and stuff. There's 274 acres with approximately 100 acres on the water. I live less than a quarter of a mile away from that place. You guys, the county, valued my house at $477,000 this year. Went up $80,000 from the last assessment. You're going to tell me that a $3.2 million piece of property that was listed, 4 years ago, 5 years ago when the county looked at it, could be valued at $4 million, $5 million right now? And yet, you just sat here and talked about Rosie's and other people kicking in and doing their part to this county. And I'm sorry, you're not going to get anything out of this here. No road work, not getting no proffers, no anything. But you're asking me as a citizen here to keep the upkeep. So I asked you guys, they are down there in Newport News, from what I understand, they were taxes, and they failed to pay it. So why are they not paying taxes up here? And on a side note, I'd like to thank Mr. Stiles for coming around and talking to us on Saturday, time out of your day. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Donna Gotzi?
Hi, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Donna Gotzi, 6713 Cherry Road in Quinton. My family moved to New Kent in 1976. I was 6 years old, so I'm really aging myself right now. I grew up here. I raised 3 daughters here. I have a degree in human services. I have domestic violence advocacy certification. I'm certified in family mediation, procedural justice, and I'm also involved in several reentry councils throughout the state of Virginia. Over the years, I've seen a lot of changes in our county, a lot of good ones and a lot of bad ones. And the one thing that's facing our community, just like every other community in the nation, is the epidemic of substance misuse. And when the individuals that are dealing with substance misuse are stigmatized and rejected, it only contributes to the vicious cycle that entrenches their disease. And we've got to remove the stigma, and the first steps to addressing this growing problem is to remove that stigma. Our recovery center is not a threat to New Kent County. It's not an attack on our community. Our greatest danger is not facing the reality of what's already going on here in New Kent and every other community. There's other recovery centers outside of New Kent. Williamsville Wellness Center is on 400 acres of property in Hanover County. No barbed wire, no fences. They're doing amazing work. We also have the Farley Center in Williamsburg that's within minutes of one of the oldest and most respected institutions in the nation, William and Mary, and Colonial Williamsburg. We can send And these are both, like, these are all affluent communities, you know, just like New Kent is. And we don't want to ignore the fact that we don't have anything here, and the argument wants to be made we can send to other localities. So it's okay for New Kent residents to have to go to other localities that they can provide that resource, but you can't come here because we're too good to let people who are hurting. And what kind of message does that send our citizens, your constituents, that we don't welcome a recovery center here because we want to bury the problem. We don't want to face what's really going on here. And it could be anyone in church, Friday night football games, shopping in Food Lion, anywhere in this county, and they're struggling and they're suffering. So I urge you to support the relocation. We're known for wineries and golf and Rosie's Gaming, and we need to be known for something greater. And we need to do something that's extraordinary and change the narrative of addiction and welcome a recovery here and show our residents, your constituents, that we're going to give you hope, that we're there for you. Thank you.
Thank you. John Carell.
My name is John Farrell. I live at 8835 Shrewsbury Drive, New Kent, Virginia. Members of the board, thank you for giving me the chance to speak. Oftentimes when recovery centers are talked about getting moved into a community, the phrase "not in my backyard" is used. I just want to spend a couple of moments talking about what happens in my front yard. I live in a decent subdivision right here in New Kent. In our community, we have 3 retired teachers that all work their entire teaching career at New Kent. We have a civil servant who spent his career here in New Kent, lives in our neighborhood. We have first responders in it. We have a med-flight helicopter pilot that lives in our neighborhood. And also, when I go to the mailbox, I can look 7 houses either direction, and I can see 7 homes where young people between the ages of 19 and 26 have had their lives devastated by addiction, specifically to fentanyl and heroin. 2 of those are currently in recovery. 1, we don't know. That one's gone. Another one is in new recovery. And a 5th lost her life not long ago to overdose. These are all graduates of New Kent High School. The emphasis of how desperate we need these facilities more and more each day cannot be expressed enough. They save lives. They saved my life. I've been in recovery for 27 years. Had it not been for a facility very similar to what Faith Recoveries is trying to do, I may not be here today. These are life-changing places. The most important part of recovery is what we learn at the very beginning, and that's learning the conscious contact with a God of our understanding. It's learning how to live just one single day without the use of a drink or drug. And without those opportunities that are provided at places like Faith Recovery, it just doesn't happen. The places that were spoke about, like Farley Center and Williamsville, they're packed full. The beds are full. It's hard. Many people that have insurance can't get into them. There's waiting periods. Many times that results in death. There was one thing that was noted too. It was my understanding that while this property is going to be tax exempt, isn't it currently tax exempt now? Is that a fact? I believe it is, and has been tax exempt for quite some time.
Zone conservation.
I'm sorry?
Zone conservation.
Gotcha. So it has been tax exempt then. We're not, New Kent County is not bringing any tax revenue off of the property. Is that correct?
The commissioner is the one that assesses that, so it is on a lower base tax, but because it's conservation.
Yes.
But it's taxed at a certain point. The commissioner could give you the exact answer on that.
Okay. Well, that's all I have. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Isabel Jarvis.
I'm Isabel Davis Jarvis. I'm here because I think of my neighbors down here, the ones that live across the road. And
your address, real quick.
Huh?
Can you state your address real quick, please?
Oh, 18910 Lynn Lake Road, Barnesville, Virginia.
Thank you, Ms. Jarvis.
I think about my neighbors. They've given us a good thing, but you know, a lot of us have been here forever, and we're going to have this to come in. We're older. I'm 82 years old. We've supported the county with everything. And all these addictions, you ever stop to think it's their choice? It wasn't us that did it. We worked here. We're Christians. We've paid our taxes. We've done everything. And those people in those neighborhoods are the same thing. Think about us. Would you want it next door to you? They're putting it out here, make us listen to it. Please don't let it happen, because our neighbors really want to be where they're at in a peaceful community. And that's the way we feel about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy Gaudier?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Sandy Gautier, and I live on High Bluff Lane in Barhamsville. I'm here to officially present the board with petitions signed by New Kent citizens and taxpayers who are asking you to deny this conditional use permit 2-22. An online petition was started in February, right after the lightly advertised and very poorly attended initial briefing to the public was held at McKimmy Woods. 56 signatures were obtained online as a result of that initial meeting, asking that this cut be turned down. That said, a new petition was drawn up, and folks started walking house to house to obtain actual pen-to-paper signatures. I have over 200 signatures here. They were obtained from your New Kent neighbors and are now submitted to you. As we walked, or more correctly, as we drove down one long driveway to the next long rural driveway, we were greeted with two different responses. Either the property owner had heard of the proposal to bring a drug rehab facility here and they opposed it. Or more commonly, they had heard absolutely nothing about it and they were outraged, they were angry, they were disbelieving. We've been told we are not Christians or we are haters if we don't greet this proposed facility with open arms. That's an insult to all New Kent. Make no mistake about it. The overwhelming majority of your citizens know firsthand the devastating effects of drug and alcohol addiction, and we're familiar with rehab programs too, including my own family. We have thoroughly reviewed the operation of Faith Recovery, and we find many troubling aspects. Most important, they have no license. And I just heard they're getting a day license. This is a 24-hour facility they're talking about. So they have no license. They have no professional medical staff. There's no doctor, psychiatrist, psychologist, PA, LPN, RN. There's none of those people connected with this program. And the safety of our rural community cannot be guaranteed, as they themselves acknowledge they legally are not allowed to restrain students, and that walkaways have and will continue to happen even here. The McKimmy Woods area is a peaceful rural community in New Kent. We ask you not to bring these 40 students, addicts, alcoholics, felons, plus a host of others into our community. They do not belong here. The safety of our parents, our children, our grandchildren, our friends, our neighbors must be a priority of the Board of Supervisors. I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and I'm submitting these over 100 signatures.
Thank you. Mike Bircher.
I'm Mike Bircher. I live at 3928 Rochambeau Drive in Williamsburg. My 85-year-old mother lives at 17902 Stage Road in Barhamsville. I am the former director of McKimmy Woods Camp and Conference Center, and I served as its director for 23 years. I currently serve as the pastor at Stonehouse Presbyterian Church, just over the line in the Stonehouse development. And our church is the closest one of the Presbytery of Eastern Virginia, which owns the property. My church is the closest one. And so I am intimately involved and have been intimately involved with the property for most of my life. To clear up one misconception that's already been said, the property, while it was a camp from 1962 to 2016, there were no taxes paid. It has always been a church property, and no bid was ever submitted from the County of New Kent for the property. So in those 52 years in the life of McKimmy Woods, the program transformed the lives of nearly 150,000 children and adults. It is a place of discovery, peace, hope, and healing, and it is holy ground. Many of the neighbors here tonight I have known for decades because I lived in that house that's falling down right now from disuse, and so I know these people. My mother lives within 1 mile of the property. And these are people I care about and I love, and I would not say this unless I truly believe that this program is a good fit for this property. I would not ever place my neighbors in danger if I believed that was a real thing. And I have spoken with Travis. I've done a great deal of research. This program has an outstanding track record, and I would be delighted as a member of the Presbytery for this property to be used in this way. Those who come to Faith Recovery recognize that they need help to recover, and they're looking to leave behind a life of self-destruction. Participants who complete the program often become an asset to their family and community, and in fact, a graduate of Youth Challenge became one of our very best camp counselors back in 1996. This property is an ideal location for this transformation to take place because of the map that he showed you with the cluster buildings in the middle are well buffered from everything else around it. I was amused by the traffic comment because I can't imagine any more traffic than 90 families coming to drop off their children on a Sunday afternoon or pick them up on Saturday morning. By approving this permit, instead of focusing on what can go wrong, we can focus on what can go right, and that is providing hope, healing, and wholeness to people who desperately need it, both in our community and beyond. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. J.B. Benson.
J.B. Benson, 3902 Homestead Road, Lenexa. Mr. Chair and distinguished members of the board, thank you for your service to the community. We don't have a chance to say that too often. I know most of the people in the room here agree with me. They have no idea of what it takes to be a supervisor. Having said that, I don't think there's anyone in this room who disagrees with the objective of the McKimmy Woods project. We've had eloquent testimony to the benefits of rehab, but I don't think that's the point. We have a comprehensive plan. You approved the comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission has recommended overwhelmingly to reject this conditional use permit. I urge you to follow their lead. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Daniel.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Mark Daniel, and I live at 3936 Ranch Acres Drive, Quinton, Virginia. I'm a Methodist. I play the piano in church, and I love it so much. I get so excited that the minister took me aside and he said, Mark, you look like you're having too much fun back there. I said, no, I'm very serious. I just love this music. He says, well, you're not convincing us. We think you're having too much fun. And as I hear all these comments, I want to make a couple of observations. First of all, a lot of the people who spoke in favor of this either do not live in New Kent or they work in this industry. And a lot of the folks that are very concerned about it and are unconvinced are citizens of this county. So perception is reality. What would the people's perception be if you approved this after the Planning Commission so overwhelmingly said that you shouldn't? And what is the purpose of the comprehensive plan? It's to encourage things that are good and valuable and in support by the community, and maybe consider not doing the things that are not supported by the community. On all of our overlapping goals and objectives, we repeat the same enabling motions: what's good for the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens. So why isn't there a category in the comprehensive plan for these type of facilities? Could be because no one ever thought someone would be so foolish as to let another locality bring that magnitude of their issues to ours. There's nothing wrong with what they do. They have a great program. And if you say, no, that's not going to be the end of it, just means it won't come here. And wherever you are, you should be in some place that the community supports you. So I want you to consider that if it's approved, what's the win in it for the average Joe in New Kent, the average citizen that pays their taxes, they raise their family, they quietly live as good citizens? In the end, what's the upside for New Kent if the people have to live in fear? Because they are. I mean, you've heard people say, I'm scared of this. When I came here, that wasn't there, right? We're not saying that you can't have a church there or whatever, but they're saying that we are not in support of something of this magnitude when you have dozens of people who have special needs. That's a good and valuable thing, but I just question whether it's wise to bring it down here. And again, turning it down doesn't mean it won't continue. It just means it won't continue here. Citizens of New Kent don't live the way that these people. Why should they be forced or made to consider something or a lifestyle that they don't live in? In the end, it's not reasonable to place this burden on an unconvinced and an unwilling community and your citizens. And I ask that you not approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that ends the citizens' comment period of this public hearing, so I'll close that part. Now I'll turn it over to the board for questions. Mr. Hall, can you come? Anybody got any comments, questions?
I had a couple questions, Mr. Chairman. I was wondering if this were to go forward, would it be possible for there on the CUP for there to be for the CUP to be non-transferable if it was deeded as such in the agreement, the sales agreement with the seller? So that might be more of a question for Mr. Hefty.
Mr. Lockwood, as I understand it, you're asking if you can put a condition, add a condition on the use permit that it shall be particular to the ownership of this business entity?
Yes. So that if they were no longer around, or if at some point in the future decided to sell the property to another entity, that conditional use would not convey with the property.
Yes, if the majority of the board wanted to add that as a condition, that would be fine.
And I'm curious why, when it went through with the conditional uses, the conditions that are listed, there was nothing in there about annual community reviews as far as safety and performance, that type of thing. That might be more directed towards Ms. LeDuc.
Do you mean, well, the first condition requires them to come back to the board with an annual update and an annual report. We could expand that to include community outreach or town halls or whatever you're suggesting.
So not just the county board of supervisors or so forth, but we could also include that to be a community review.
Sure.
Okay. And I'm curious if, Mr. Hall, if those would be conditions you would consider to be reasonable.
I mean, certainly we're open to reviews. I guess I would have a question. I mean, certainly, gentleman's stated perception is reality. So what are the metrics, I guess, that would be used if there's some sort of negative determination on the county or anything like that? Not that we certainly intend for that to happen, but I would just like to be clear on the county's expectations as far as those type of metrics. But certainly, we want to be open with the community. I think we've done our best to be extremely transparent to this point with the board and the community, and have no problem continuing to do so. So,
Mr. Hefty, would that be something that, if it was deemed not favorable to the community still, that the condition could be rescinded?
I think conceptually we would just have to be clear on what that is. I mean, we need to establish what the trigger actually is, so we're not creating something too vague to actually be enforced. So
right.
It depends on the way we word it.
Okay.
Mr. Hefty, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hefty, I have a question for you and Mr. Lockwood.
Yes, ma'am.
The community is not voting on this. The Board of Supervisors are voting on this. So you're saying if they come back for annual review and the community is not satisfied, then what happens? It still comes back to the board, right?
Sure.
Okay,
I think the
so it
community
says
input.
it has a conditional use permit. Number one is that the owner shall provide to the County Board of Supervisors annual update to report their activities, operations.
And I would want that there be some community input in that review process.
I'm quite sure we're going to have community input.
Yes, I would want that to be stipulated, though, that this would also include opportunity for the community to provide their input during those reviews.
Okay.
I think one of the sticking points for me is definitely the non-transferable aspect of it. So that down the road, if the property was sold or if there was a, God forbid, a failure on the part of your business, that that stipulation that the conditional use would end at that transfer. So that somebody else couldn't come in and operate a similar operation without us approving that particular operation.
As I've stated, Mr. Lockwood, on that question, I can answer yes. You could simply amend the first condition to say that it shall become null and void in the event that the facility becomes bankrupt or ceases operation or is transferred to an entity other than Faith Recovery. So that would be something the board could do if you wanted.
It's been kind of difficult weeding through some of this stuff because there is a lot of stigma attached to addiction. It seems to be the kind of the scarlet letter of today, the A for addiction. It just seems that the outcasts of society, they used to be lepers and now they're addicts, and we want to push them to the sidelines or outside the city walls so we don't have to worry about them infecting the rest of us. It's very understandable for there to be concerns about safety and all that when you're dealing with that kind of stuff. And I think some of that stigma that comes with it is that, we've got these types of facilities are dealing with people that have already been through detox, or they've already kind of committed to some recovery program. They're not coming in there stoned and, crackhead zombies running down the street, So, I mean, it's a little different situation and scenario than folks that are out there now. When I held that poorly organized town hall at McKimmy Woods, I drove past two residences that I personally reported to the sheriff's department that were dealing with drug issues on my way to McKimmy Woods from my house. So it's not like it doesn't exist in New Kent. It's not like it doesn't exist everywhere in our community. And, you know, I hear the not in my backyard, but, you know, where? Whose backyard is it okay? I mean, where do we draw the line on who's going to help your kid? My involvement with Proclaiming Grace outreach, you know, it's not part of our outreach, but we get a lot of people that come to us that are just looking for a listening ear. And I hear about it a lot more than I care to hear about it, of kids that are dying, kids that are overdosing. We just got a prayer request the other day for somebody that their 18-year-old daughter is on their third overdose. How many times is that going to work for her, you know? It's just difficult to hear about the issues that are out there. And, you know, knowing people that have gone through programs like this that have been successful, and granted, it's not for everybody, you know. If there was one program that worked for everyone, there would only be one program, and we'd have a lot fewer addicts, and we'd have one provider. You know, some people respond well to a 12-step program or a therapeutic setting or behavioral therapy. Some people just tough enough to go through it themselves, and some people just need Jesus. I mean, so when we live in a society where it seems like everything, and I mean everything, is permissible, but nothing is forgivable, it makes it really difficult for me to make a decision that pushes these folks down the road somewhere else. Because I have seen firsthand what these types of programs can do to save lives. So that's what I've got to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I think I would agree with someone stated a little earlier that there's nobody in this room that does not think there's a need. There's some wonderful testimonies tonight, but I feel like we're sitting on this board and we have to look at it from a comprehensive plan review. And we have a section 98.744 standards of review to pass a conditional use permit, what is being asked for tonight. And there's 7 requirements there. And 3 of them are questionable if the CUP meets those requirements, in my opinion. The proposed use, one of them, the proposed use should not be detrimental to the use of the development or adjacent properties or the general neighborhood, nor impair the value of buildings or property in surrounding areas. The proposed use shall adequately provide for access facilities for the estimated traffic. This was a conservation park camp that was, I think she said maybe 90 people would come in there, but they would come in there on Saturday. Then they would come pick them up the following week. So they would only come in there twice a week, and just during the summertime as well. You're looking at 40 people plus coming in and out of that facility on those roads each and every day. And the proposed use should not be prejudicial to the character of the neighborhood. And I'm not so sure we meet that. So I understand, and I think what you're doing is a great organization, but we have to look at it from what our comprehensive plan states, and I do have a few concerns that the CPU does not meet that.
And if I may, just on the traffic, just for clarity, there's not 40 individuals with vehicles coming in and out every day. There's the people that are there all day. If there's a reason that we're transported, whether we go to church or whatever, we have 15 passenger vans. So it's not to the extent of traffic that is maybe perceived. There's not a ton of people going in and out with cars all the time. We do leave for church services and outside meetings and things, but there's transportation in vans and multiple vehicles in the vans, but I certainly see your point.
Okay, with the public comments over. Public comments over.
Mr. Chairman. And I agree with what you said, and I also can go along with what Mr. Lockwood said. That is, and I'm sure everybody in this room has known somebody, somewhere, somehow, family member or just a good friend. My biggest concern is a comment that you made, Mr. Hall, about early on when you said you wanted to take people out of their element in that Newport News area, to get them away from the element. But what's to keep New Kent from becoming that element again? That's my biggest concern.
Yes, sir. And I think when you're talking about the element in and of itself, again, we're talking about a downtown area of Newport News, and these are people that come to us they're from all over, and so you bring them into that environment where there is a lot of temptation and all those things. And if we can pull them out of that environment and into a more where the temptations aren't 2 blocks away. Also, when I mentioned taking people out of their own environment, it's really it's more about getting them away from what's familiar and close. It's easy for me to leave a program if it's right there in my neighborhood. It's easy for me to fall into temptation if I know that I'm in a downtown area and I can go to the bus stop 2 or 3 blocks away and score some drugs or whatever, right? And so, and we've done a great job of managing all those things, but really it's as much about the new environment being conducive to emotional healing and spiritual growth as it is the environment in McKinney Woods provides a much better place for healing than the downtown Newport News facility, I guess.
And I agree with Mr. Evelyn too on some of the concerns with the comprehensive plan, not fitting in there. But that was my biggest concern, because we don't want New Kent County to become Newport News.
Certainly.
We don't want people to be able to walk down the street to be able to purchase or get their hands on drugs to whatever.
And again, the people we're bringing in are people that have been highly vetted, as you've heard, and these are people that are seeking help. So they want a life change. They want to get out of that lifestyle. So that's a big part of it as well.
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Tiller.
No, you can't believe I'm not talking.
Is that it? Anybody else have any more?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'll let you know I am a Presbyterian, and my father was a Presbyterian deacon for 24 years. I don't necessarily go along with some of the Presbyterian doctrine since 2010, so that's why I'm not a practicing Presbyterian, but I am a Christian. Several things. One is I feel like I've done my due diligence. On April the 20th, I went to Newport News and visited the Youth Challenge and got to see the environment that they're in. Got to visit with some of the neighbors. There are no houses around there as opposed to Roper's Road. There was a 7-Eleven. Went in to talk to that guy, but we couldn't understand each other. And then I went over to a brand new, looks like a $10 million fire station. I'm glad our fire chief wasn't there because he'd be wanting us to build him one. And I rang the doorbell 4 times and no one came to the door. So I left there. I've also met with the opposition leader, one of the leaders that helped send a petition around, so I got to hear that side. I also met with Mr. Travis Hall and Patricia Page. Last Friday for about a 2-hour meeting. And then this past Saturday, I went through the Roper Road subdivision over that way, knocking on doors to talk to Citizens 101. Not a lot of people answered the doors. I think they thought I was Jehovah's Witness and they didn't want to come to the door. Yeah, I don't know. But the thing about it is I've done my due diligence, and I have several questions. One is something that it's just been so disturbing since day one is the name of the facility. It's, from what I understand, it used to be Teen Challenge. Then it changed with Don Ragland. You know him?
He was a former board member years ago. We were founded as Youth Challenge, actually.
Right. Youth Challenge. Then you went to Teen Challenge? Or
no, Teen Challenge is a like ministry that's on a national level. We are somewhat modeled after their program, but we've always been corporately separate from them, and we're Youth Challenge.
Right. And then you guys changed your name to Peninsula Drug Rehabilitation.
The Peninsula Drug Rehabilitation Foundation is a separate, completely separate entity, a separate 501c3 that actually Don Ragland was the president of. That is a separate foundation. The purpose of that is to raise funds for programs like ours.
But you were the principal officer.
I am now, yes, sir.
Now you are.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He retired.
And now you changed the name to Faith Recovery. It's just hard to try to figure out, because I know at one time you said you guys had some financial problems, that you owed Newport News, City Newport News back taxes. We had that discussion Friday. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I have a 501c3 and we are tax exempt. So how could you owe the City of Newport News taxes if you are a faith-based company and a 501c3 that doesn't pay taxes? How could you be in debt to Newport News City?
Okay, so just to kind of clear some of that up, if I can just kind of just go through it. Founded as Youth Challenge in 1979. PDRF, again, is a completely separate entity that is more about raising funds to support entities. Basically, it's open on paper. It's not really functional right now. As far as the taxes go, I can't really speak to the why, because I wasn't around when it was founded. I wasn't around when they moved into that facility there. I know that the women's facility was always tax exempt. I never understood the agreement with the city on the Hope Center where our men's facility was. I never understood why that was why they paid taxes. And I know I can't answer to the why. I think from my own investigations of trying to figure out, I've always felt it was unfair. And I had gone, when I took over, I'd gone to the city, and I always felt it was unfair that they wouldn't support us through their grant program because we are a religious organization like a church, but they charged us real estate tax, which churches don't pay real estate tax. And when we looked into what our options were, basically what we found out was the state had relegated those decisions at the discretion of the localities. And for whatever reason, I don't know why. I don't know if it was, I just don't know what it was. But I do know that when I took over in 2015, I went and met with the city manager. I'd have to look to give you, but I believe it's 2016, I think it's 2016, possibly early 2017, that the city did vote and make the property tax exempt after I'd gone back to them and addressed the issue. We had already had some past due real estate tax. The organization had some financial struggles, like many small nonprofits do, like many businesses do, like many corporations do. And when I took over in 2015, that was one of the things that we knew that we needed to immediately address. And so we were able to go on some payment plans and make payments. And then part of our strategic plan was, in addition to wanting to relocate, in addition to the name change, and all of the things that we wanted to do to bring clarity to who we were as an organization, to improve our state and kind of do the right thing and pay our debts and get to a new place where we can operate functionally and begin to grow and be prosperous. Is when we put the property up for sale, and then so the property wasn't foreclosed on for taxes or anything like that. It was a strategic decision on our part because we were just paying these payment plans. We weren't making any real headway, and the sale of the building gave us the opportunity to take care of past debt, plus give us the money we needed to move on and find a new location and be able to invest some funds into the new property, need be, which we have. So we had a contract on the property with a corporation out of Maryland that wanted to do tax credit housing in the building. City didn't want to approve their project, and there was a contingency in the contract that we had with them. And after some conversations with the city manager and some city council members, we were going to sell the building. We needed to sell the building. We wanted to move to a new location. It was part of our plan. And the city decided that, they decided they wanted to buy it from us. And they've got a plan for the building. They've got a buyer for the building. It's just been this process that we've worked our way through. So I understand some of the confusion, but there's no. It's just when I took over, we just addressed some needs and we worked really hard to get ourselves where we are today, and we're in a really good position right now. So, but we did have some issues in the past, but they're taken care of.
Right. Well, some of what you said makes sense. Some of it doesn't.
Okay.
The part that you're on a payment plan to pay back taxes, but you don't know why you were paying the taxes.
Well, I didn't have any control over whether or not we owed them. So it was a bill that we had, and whether or not I understood why the bill exists, because that was under prior leadership, it was still an obligation that the organization had to pay these taxes, and so we entered into the agreement. We were paying the taxes, and then we paid everything off once we sold the property.
Okay. Is John Paul a full-time counselor with your group? Full-time, works just for you only?
Yes. Yes.
No, he does not sub out with any other company, he just works solely with you guys.
Yeah, I think he does an internship, I've been with Youth Challenge since 2004. And so I started as a student, became an intern,
Can you come up to the podium, please?
I'm sorry.
I started with Youth Challenge as a student in 2004. I did my internship, and then I worked for them first as an intern, then as a thrift store manager, then I became the teacher. And then I went to work for Teen Challenge, the different organization, for 3 years, and then came back in 2016. I learned a lot from them and brought what I learned from them back, and I've been with Youth Challenge solely and completely ever since.
So where does the funding come from to pay your salary?
3 ways. Okay. 3 ways. Funding of our entire program comes from basic 3 sources. Donations from wherever, whenever, whether it be organizations, churches, businesses, private individuals who believe in our program and support us continually, consistently, or randomly. That's one. The second is the work we do, the enterprises that we do. The enterprises we do bring in a small portion that help us to pay our bills. And then we ask for a tuition or a fee, and that's $3,000 per student. But we don't always get that. We let individuals come in regardless, even if they can't pay that. But somehow God works it. These 3 sources have continually supported us for 50 years.
Thank you. And I do appreciate what you do.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And if I can just bring some clarity, like any other business or church or program or what nonprofit or whatever it is, there's a number of volunteers, but salaries is a normal part of what would be an operational expense of the organization. And so the donations that come in and from businesses and individuals and churches, the tuition is a very small sliver, and the enterprises do bring in about 30%. So, but it all goes right back into the organization to pay people that are providing direct care to those that are.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And then the only other thing I have, during our meeting last Friday, I asked you, when you got 20, 30, 40 guys together, you usually have a guy who's the bully or king of the hill, and you have problems. You said you have no problems. That occasionally you have spats with each other, and you just tell them to hush it up, and that's it. And they do that. That you really don't have any problems.
I mean, honestly, we've had probably very few. I could think of a handful, maybe 2 or 3 fights that we've had since I've been there that were quickly broken up. For the most part, it sincerely is some verbal altercations. You know, guys get loud. They might, get in each other's faces, and then we're able to diffuse those situations and break them up.
And I know one of the concerns that a lot of the citizens had was, and I think the sheriff even addressed this, that if you had a need at your facility, and if the sheriff didn't have a deputy in that area, it could take as much as 15 minutes to get someone there, right?
Yeah, that's a question for the sheriff.
Right.
Yeah. So, but
and 15 minutes could be a long time when you need help.
Sure.
So did you call on Newport News Police Department that often?
Newport News Police has been to our facility, for civil service and things like that on a number of occasions, mainly the sheriff's department. But we've had very few, like emergency type situations where we've had, where there's something violent has broken out, and we've had to call the police to defuse some sort of a violent situation.
Okay. I took it on my own to do a FOIA request from the Newport News Police Department.
Yes, sir.
And I think our director back there has a screenshot. Can you blow that up any larger than that? Can you blow it up any more? You did. Is that large as you can get it? Okay. Anyway, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but it kind of concerned me. That sheet right there is the and let me get this straight. You are at 332 34th Street.
Yes, sir.
Right. All right. That's where these calls were dispatched to. You can see a lot of this is civil paperwork, civil paper service. 7/19/20, unconscious, unresponsive person. 7/26, assault. On 9/30, vehicle stop, warning given. On 3/3/21, protective order serviced. On 5/5/21, suspicious vehicle, assisted an officer. 5/8/21, gunshots. 5/23/21, overdose. How can you have an overdose if you don't allow drugs at your facility? 5/26, suicide. That was a rough week for you guys. From 5/5 to 5/26. 9/2/21, a fugitive. 9/3, fugitive. 9/7, fugitive. 9/13, fugitive. 11/22, tampering with an auto. 12/4/21, overdose. 12/30/21, fugitive. 2/27/22, dead person. What is all that?
So if we can go back, and I'll do my best to recollect a lot of those, okay? Again, the civil service, the assault, I don't have any direct remembrance of that. Okay.
but you don't
Yeah,
have
yeah.
those things go on.
Well, some of these calls, the assault I can't specifically speak to, but like the gunshots and like some of the vehicle stuff, these are things that we've called the police from our location because we've heard gunshots in the area. We're downtown Newport News. You know, the assault, I don't remember an assault taking place on our property.
The assault was one of.
Come up to,
Sorry, yeah. So the assault was one of the residents assaulted a staff member, and so the police were called. So that was that. Unconscious, unresponsive. Someone was unconscious and unresponsive, and we obviously called the EMTs. So that was not the police.
Unconscious from what?
We don't know, but if they're not responding, we're obviously going to take the proper medical precautions. You got to understand, right? At any rehab facility you talk about, at a Farley Center, at a Williamsville, at any rehab facility anywhere, things are going to happen. That's the reality of it. It's the unfortunate reality of addiction. That one right there, unconscious, unresponsive, I can't tell you exactly what that was, but the EMTs did come, and I don't know what happened with that. The vast majority of these are civil matters where people were served because they had passed due child support or something like that. The fugitive one, that is actually an individual whose last known address was our facility. And so the officer continued to come throughout that week looking for that individual who no longer resided there and had not resided there in years. Gunshots was one of our staff members calling because there were gunshots locally, because in the downtown Newport News area, that's obviously a thing. We go down, suspicious vehicle, protective order service. I'm assuming that was one of the individuals within the program had a protective order out against them by, someone, a spouse or something. I don't know the exact details of that. Suspicious vehicle, that could have just been it's probably one of our staff members calling because a suspicious vehicle was in the parking lot. What else do we have?
Overdose.
Overdose. So that's exactly what it said. We called the EMTs because we believed someone had overdosed.
But how could they overdose if you don't have any drugs at your facility?
Right. Because the person somehow got drugs into the facility. You cannot run. That is the nature of the beast. And if we're saying anything different, we're just not being honest, right?
And again, some of that, not to blame everything on downtown Newport News, but some of that is a guy is right around the corner. They'll sneak out, they'll get it, or whatever. And so that's part of one of the reasons why we want to get out of there. I was just told the suicide wasn't really.
The suicide was someone found behind a dumpster.
Yeah.
Off of at the end of our facility, at the end of the parking lot. Did you visit our facility?
Very little of it.
Okay, so at the end of the facility, there's some dumpsters, and some homeless man was found behind one of those dumpsters, and I guess they ruled it a suicide. I wasn't aware. I just know that the police and the proper authorities came out there for that.
And one of the overdoses, according to my men's director, was somebody drank hand sanitizer.
Right.
So those things, those things happen, but we manage them.
Okay, that's good. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
all right. Any other comments or questions for Reverend Hall? Thank you.
Yep, thank you, sir.
Any more comments from the board? Discussion? What's the pledge of the board? Past y'all's bedtime? It's past y'all's bedtime? We've been a couple hours now.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Tiller?
I'd like to make a motion. If there's no more discussion, I move to deny resolution R-13-22.
Thank you, Mr. Tiller. Is there any further discussion? All right, this motion on the table. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members?
Mr. Lockwood,
No.
Mr. Tiller,
Aye.
Ms. Page, Mr. Steers,
Aye.
and Mr. Evelyn.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say, for the sake of clarity, I offered my no, Mr. Hall, and to the rest of the members of Faith Recovery, not in defiance of my neighbors or constituents, but maybe as an incentive for you guys to find some place where you can land in somebody's backyard. I wish you luck. Thank you.
All right. Let's take a 5-minute break.
Thank you all so much. Thank you. I know it was a long night.
Hello. I'm Mandy Sabo. We emailed. Yes, you as well.
We gotta get out of that downtown area.
Oh yeah, last time was even worse.
It was. Yes, this was actually quite refreshing. Last time.
Happened during planning commission.
That's about how long they last.
Yep.
2 hours and 3 minutes. Did we? No. Oh, no, I took care of it. We should be good for another 2.5 years on that. And if we clean it up every 6 months, we will be good forever, but.
No, it's real interesting. I was going to ask you if you had a cup of coffee for me.
I know.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's get this bill back. Get my back. All right, go to the next public hearing. Application ZM-01-22 and CUP-03-22. Jackie and Mark Smith, event venue and cidery, ordinance O-04-22, and resolution R-14-22. Ms. LaDuke.
All right, thank you, sir. I'll keep this brief.
Thank you.
Jackie and Mark Smith have requested the rezoning of approximately 4.45 acres of land from R2 to business, and also a conditional use permit to renovate the property into a cidery and event venue. The subject property is located at 9302 Eastview Lane in Providence Forge and is the site of a former schoolhouse. This area of the county is designated as village on the future land use map in the comp plan, and the property is surrounded by properties zoned business and R2, as well as Route 60 to the south. The applications were reviewed by all reviewing agencies, and their minor comments will be addressed during the site plan process. The Planning Commission considered these applications at their meeting on April 18th and voted 8-0 to send favorable recommendations on both to the board. Should you choose to vote to approve these applications, the rezoning should be approved first with ordinance O-04-22, and there are 5 proposed conditions in board resolution R-14-22 for the CUP for your consideration. I'll turn this over to Jackie.
Good evening, and thank you in advance for your consideration and the time you put into this, and hopefully I won't be too long. I do not have a PowerPoint. This is not going to be as exciting as your last people up here, but I do trust that you have the complete packages that were submitted with the plans and everything.
Yep.
So I guess I can just start with a little bit of history. I started a business in 2010 here. New Kent Coatings, I sold that last year, as of June 1st of last year, and I needed something else to do. So I went and bought a 100-year-old schoolhouse and was thinking I was going to flip it as a residence, and then started to look around and really kind of fell in love with the charm of the spot, of the building itself. Mark told me I had to find something to do because I was too young to retire. So it was built in the 1920s. It was a schoolhouse, Providence Forge School, in the 20s, with an enrollment of somewhere around 36 students. After the new old schoolhouse was built over on 249, Judge Orange purchased the building, I think for pennies on the dollar, and turned it into a residence. And he lived there. And then his son-in-law, Judge Souter, and don't quote me on this is what I've learned, Judge Souter then became the owner of the home and made some improvements and did some different things to it. And he lived there until his passing in 2011. And at that point, the two daughters put it into rental property, and it's really kind of fallen into disrepair. So we have to do a lot of work to it, whether it remains a residence or certainly a lot of money invested if it becomes a small event venue and cidery. As far as the cideries go, there are none in the county. The closest ones are within 30 to 35 miles of here. I do believe that even as a small venue, when you have these like venues with your wineries and breweries now and those things, when there's one stop off the interstate where they can take in several destinations, it generates more business. And I do believe that's why the Scott's Addition is so successful with these types of businesses there, because there are so many places that you can go and see, and brings places to dine and other types of venues. So they attract other venues. So that's pretty much everything I have.
All right, thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing real quick. Anybody signed up? No one signed up? Close the public hearing. Anybody have any questions for Ms. LeDuc or Ms. Smith?
Mr. Chairman, I've been to the property a couple times and fully support what Mark and his wife would like to do with the property.
How about Jackie and her husband?
It's been a long night.
You're going to send me to the recovery, I know that.
He knows Mark can take a joke.
That's great. Either way.
Anyone else? I agree with Ms. Steers. I think, like you said, more stuff, venues and stuff like that, it's going to help the county out. And fixing up a dilapidated house it's going to be a good use for this property, I think. So I fully support it. I entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt ordinance 0-0422. This action must be taken first.
Thank you, Mr. Steers. Ms. Watkins, we poll the members.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye.
I also move to accept resolution R-14-22. To approve, I'm sorry. With Jackie and her husband, Mark.
Thank you, Ms. Steers. Ms. Watkins, poll the members.
Ms. Page? Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Motion passed. Thank
you very much.
Good luck. Next public hearing is application ZM-02-22, Skimino Development Rezoning, ordinance O-05-22. Ms. LeDuc.
Okay, so tonight at your seats, there's a little bit of an updated schematic for this one, so I'd refer you to that as I give my brief presentation. Mr. Rodney Taylor, who's here tonight, and representatives from Skimino Development have requested the rezoning of approximately 18 acres of land from A1 to R1. The subject properties are located just to the north of 7160 Olivet Church Road. The purpose of the request is to allow the properties to be subdivided into a small community of 7 lots. Please refer also to their proffer statement in their application, which limits them to 7 lots. The future land use map designates this area of the county as rural lands, but is adjacent to the farms of New Kent PUD and also land zoned for economic opportunity. Rural lands are intended to include low-density housing in cluster or open space developments or on large lots. The proposed lot size for this development is 1 acre, with 1 parcel to be designated as community common space. These parcels do have access to the county's public water service, which the applicant intends to connect to. The application was reviewed by all the reviewing agencies, and their comments can be found in your staff memo. The Planning Commission considered this application at their meeting on April 18th and voted 6-2 to forward a favorable recommendation to the board. Ordinance O-05-22 is before you for your consideration. I'm going to introduce Mr. Rodney Taylor.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of the board. Appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and appreciate your stamina. The principals of Skimino Development LLC have deep family roots in New Kent County that date back over 100 years. My partner grew up in New Kent, is a product of New Kent Public Schools. His mother was a school teacher in New Kent County her entire career. His father, my mother, also grew up in New Kent. Our family's been involved in business and civic work in this county for a very long time. Why am I telling you all this? The point of this is to let you know that for us, New Kent is more than just a place to do business. For us, it's home. This application request for rezoning, as Ms. LeDuc stated, of those 2 parcels, about 18 acres along Olivet Church Road from A1 to R1. Our goal is to have 7 units with 1 lot proffered for green space. And we're pleased to have received the Planning Commission approval so far, as Ms. LeDuc mentioned. And want to state clearly that this application has been developed with a sincere attempt to support the county vision through carefully planned residential community that provides attractive new housing opportunities. And we respectfully request approval of this rezoning application. And I welcome any questions that you might have.
Let me open up the public hearing first. Anyone signed up? All right. Mr. John Kemp. All right. Reverend Milton Hathaway.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Milton Hathaway. I live at 9001 Crumps Middle Road in Quinton. I'm here in support of this rezoning application. I served on the Planning Commission here in New Kent for about 12 years. And in the comprehensive plan back then, our #1 goal for housing stated to provide decent, safe, and sanitary housing opportunities for all citizens of New Kent. We still need that. At a time when the median cost of a house is $366,000 in New Kent, and we have so many large subdivisions, it's really refreshing to see a small, smartly developed subdivision where you have 7 homes, and the vast majority, more than that, is open space. And so I would urge you to pass this rezoning opportunity and provide a chance for people who cannot afford a $366,000 home to have a housing opportunity here in New Kent. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Hathaway. Anybody have any questions, comments for Mr. Taylor, Ms. LeDuc?
Mr. Taylor, what would be about the average price per home?
Yeah, we're targeting the median home price in New Kent County as our target today. Obviously, it's a very dynamic situation. Prices are increasing
Right.
rapidly. But that is our goal, is to target the median home price in New Kent County. We've got to get to that stage where we can start interviewing builders and evaluate the economics.
But you don't have a price range.
Yeah, what we said is we don't want to go above $400,000 is our goal at this point.
Okay.
As Reverend Hathaway mentioned, ultimately our goal here is to make this community a place where people can afford a home. Folks who come from New Kent County will be able to step into a home that they can afford. And we talk about folks who have ordinary jobs. We're talking about teachers and firemen and police officers. We want to be able them to have an attractive home with amenities that will make it an attractive place for them to live and raise their families. That's our goal.
In other words, it's going to be market driven, pretty much.
At the end of the day, I mean,
Yeah.
it's got to be market driven.
Right. The only question I have is, it's 40-foot right of way coming in off that.
40-foot right away. And our engineer from HC Design is here and can probably speak a little bit more to your question, but please ask the question.
Does not ordinance require a 50-foot or my?
Well, we can certainly do a 50-foot. VDOT does allow a 40-foot right-of-way for development of this size, so that's why we felt like 40-foot right-of-way would be acceptable.
But does our ordinance? What does our ordinance require?
Our orders requires that the road be built to VDOT standards, and there is a process within the subdivision street manual for VDOT to get a 40-foot right-of-way.
Okay.
Correct.
I just wanted to get you move further along, so it's got to have VDOT approval anyway. Right. Ms. Page.
Mr. Chair, if I could, first of all, I think that when we talk about our comprehensive plan, it's been long. Our comprehensive plan, when we think about maintaining rural character, I would like to thank Mr. Taylor and Mr. Williams, because with 18 acres of land, we know that they could have had far more than 7 homes. So for whether it be a first-time home buyer or a home buyer, to have property that's surrounded by woods, and to not be right across the street from each other, so you look in each other's front yard. I think I am absolutely in support of that. Also, to have the number of homes, so that means it be minimum effect or negative effect on the number of kids that we would be sending to our schools, and it would still maintain its character on Oliver Church Road. So I thank you for the design plan to give these homeowners, our future homeowners, a feel of country living in a community.
Thank you, Supervisor Page. I did want to just follow up on the comment that you made that several years ago we did plant over 1,000 loblolly pines on the property. Those pines have started to grow very well at this point. I just went by there today. And the intent is that we will have a natural buffer, not only between each of the homes, but also between the first home on lot number 1 and Olivet Church Road.
Anybody else have anything to say?
Do you also get to have the existing cellular tower?
No, that's not ours.
Okay.
Crown Castle will continue to maintain their tower.
Okay.
And there's an access easement that's in place for them to be able to access that. So the intent would be they would be able to leverage the main road going into the property and then have a gate for them to be able to access the tower. And there's already a fence and designated area in place for the cell tower.
Thank you, sir. And the only other comment is I thought Mr. Hathaway or Reverend Hathaway was here to announce that he'd gone to work for UPS. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, there's no more discussion.
Yes, Ms. Page?
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt ordinance 0-05-22.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members?
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Motion passed.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Application O-A-01-22, ordinance amendment to add definitions and performance standards to energy storage projects and solar generation facilities. Ordinance O-06-22. Ms. Leduc.
Okay, this one's going to be super short. So tonight the board will consider ordinance amendment OA-01-22 to add definitions and performance standards for energy storage projects and solar generation facilities. As you know, staff and the planning commissioners have been working on these for several months now, and we feel like they're ready for public hearing and your consideration. These uses will still require a conditional use permit in the A1 and industrial zoning districts, which will give the Planning Commission and the board additional assurances to mitigate the project's impacts on a case-by-case basis. The performance standards we drafted address requirements for public notice, development standards, setbacks, waivers and modifications, coordination with local emergency services, and decommissioning. Ordinance O-06-22 is before you tonight for your consideration, and the Planning Commission did forward this to y'all with a favorable recommendation. This is a group effort, so I'd like to thank everybody, all the staff and planning commissioners for their time putting these together.
Open the public hearing. Close the public hearing. No one signed up. All right, anybody got any concerns about the new definition? Looks good to you, Mr. Hefty?
Yes, it does, Mr. Chair.
All right, I assume nobody has any comments. Motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
no more comments. I move that we pass ordinance 0-06-22. Approved then. I move that we approve ordinance 0-06-22.
O-06-22. Oh,
I think we got it.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Watkins, poll the members.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Steers? And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Next, public hearing, proposed FY23 New Kent County General Government Budget. Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I have some handouts tonight. I'm not going to go over all of them.
Yes, we had that discussion earlier.
But I do want to make sure that you have the most recent information.
I didn't get to.
Yeah, I'll come back.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment while he's handling
Yeah,
his paperwork?
yes, sir.
Last Friday afternoon, I had the pleasure of touring New Kent Elementary School. The new school in Bottomsbury. Quentin, I'm sorry. New Kent's right across the street. My bad. If any of y'all have the opportunity, he gives a great tour, and he doesn't charge anything. And it really is, yeah. We got our money's worth, that's for sure. But it is. I think it's going to be a really nice school. And Dr. Nichols and Mr. Hockman were kind enough to walk around with my wife and I for about an hour and explain everything to us. So it's an impressive building. And that's it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Still on schedule?
We're getting there. Way under budget and working through the schedule. So
That's a very political answer.
we'll be ready.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This evening, we have a public hearing for our FY23 budget, totaling $90,635,692. Highlights on the budget: I am proposing a 68-cent real estate tax rate, a $3 vehicle tax, personal property tax rate, and a $3.25 boats and campers and RVs personal property tax rate, as proposed by the Commissioner of Revenue at our work session last month. You have an updated PowerPoint presentation that's been updated since the presentation I initially provided back in March. And page 3 actually gives an accounting of all the changes that have been made since that initial presentation. I've also passed out a spreadsheet, which is kind of a summary. It is a summary of the FY23 presentation with the 68-cent proposed real estate tax rate. That gives you new revenues of $5,359,577. Of that amount, 1.8 is being recommended for the school board, school administration, which is a change from last month. Last month's the recommendation was 1.3. The difference is, as we received the Commissioner of Revenue's numbers last month, we had the opportunity to review those numbers, and we identified additional revenue above what the Commissioner of Revenue was showing. And basically where that came from, in this current budget year, there was such a huge increase projected in personal properties, increases we had never seen before. We were ultra conservative on using the personal property revenue numbers. So we actually decreased the projected revenues in this current year's budget for personal properties taxes. The commissioner last month showed you new revenues based on her recommended revenues for this year, which we did not budget the full recommendation. So therefore, there was an additional roughly $700,000 of additional revenue. Salary study, that has not changed, $1.3 million. I do have a salary study recommendation to implement, and the budgeted amount will cover that amount. We have scheduled a presentation to you at your March work session. Our consultant, McGrath and Associates, will be presenting their findings, and I'll also be sending the findings to you prior to the March 25th, so you'll have some time to review it. May, I'm sorry. So you'll have time to review it prior to the presentation from our consultant. And the only other change, too, as I'm highlighting the changes, is we did increase our contingency fund by $129,000, and that was the amount that was left over from the additional revenues that we identified after increasing the school's budget, their transfer. That is my budget recommendation based on the 68-cent tax rate, and that 68 cents was my recommendation at our last meeting as well. If you do decide to do a 67-cent revenue tax rate, I have shown on the spreadsheet an option for that as well. That does include basically with the schools keeping the their transfer at 1.3 million, which was presented at the last meeting, and that would increase your amount of money going to the contingency also to 224,272. Yeah.
Why are you going, just wondering, the increase at 67 is 224 and 129 at 68?
Yes.
Just wondering your reasoning for that.
Sure. With the 67-cent revenue, notice at 68 cent, your total revenue is $5,359,477. At the 67-cent rate, your total revenue is $4,962,719, roughly $400,000 less. So you don't have as much additional money. The additional money is $224,272 at the 67-cent rate.
You couldn't add some of that to schools?
You definitely can.
Okay.
Yes. So these are the options that you have before you for the general fund. And as you are aware, but for the public, by state code, we cannot take action on the budget this evening. We have to wait 14 days. Therefore, at your May work session, staff will be asking you to adopt a budget.
All right. Well, I guess I'll open the public hearing for the FY23 budget. No one signed up? I think this is the most important thing we do all year, so I just assume that our constituents think we're doing a really good job if they're not coming out here complaining, because I look at other localities and their budget meetings aren't quite as quiet, but I think that goes a lot saying to our staff, our budget team, and all of our directors in the county each and every year. So,
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
yes, ma'am, Ms. Page.
What is the, where is the overtime increase?
Is there a particular department? Most of the overtime increases, you'll have to go to the actual budget book that was passed out and look within each department, because we budget overtime by departments.
So this is the total?
This is the total overall budget, yes.
All right, I closed the public hearing. No one signed up. So we can't take any action tonight, but does anybody have any comments for Mr. Hathaway?
Yes. I think just maybe a question / comment. I think my biggest concern is the reduction of the personal property rate from 375 to 3. Because what happens if next year those values, instead of being $8,000 over, are back to normal?
Yeah, that's a concern, and the reality is we're not in a normal environment as far as vehicle sales right now and values. And I do want to stress, and I'm glad you brought that up, that this reduction more than likely is temporary. And it is a reaction to the current economic times that we're facing. As values drop for vehicles, as I anticipate they will at some point, I don't have the crystal ball on that, because even though interest rates are going up, supply chain is still a challenge. So vehicles aren't coming to the line as quick. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But it is something that we'll have to look at during our next budget year. And if values do drop significantly, we will have to look at creating additional revenues, which could involve increasing the personal property tax.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lockwood?
Kind of in the same vein, Mr. Hathaway, a lot of the increase came from the value of used cars going up significantly.
Yes.
Not just the value of new cars coming into the, purchased and brought into the community. Would it be better? Maybe. Because when things do loosen up, and, God willing they will, we don't know what that timeline looks like, but the value of those now even older vehicles is going to drop significantly. And would we be better off in the next year, or if this continues, instead of changing the rate and having hearings and all that, what if we just kind of equalized and gave a rebate or a refund instead of changing the rate? We gave a refund and back to the. Somebody's shaking their head over there. It just seems like it would be an easier transition.
There is a way to accomplish that, but
I think the Commissioner of Revenue
would have to agree to it.
Yeah. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, if you want to one alternative is to equalize or do an equalization that's not taxing it at 100% of the value.
Right.
But that would require, you'd have to get the commissioner and talk to her. Her presentation to the board was based on this new legislation that allows you to treat it as a separate class of property and to reduce the rate. I don't know that you could do a refund specifically. I'd have to look into that, whether there's authority to do a refund. I don't think there is.
But there's no obligation to reduce the rate. There's an opportunity.
Yes, you do not. You can leave it as is. You are not required.
So if we left the rate the same and we provided a refund or a rebate or something, I'm not trying to make things more difficult, but
I talked with the. There was some discussion with the commissioner about maybe keeping the rate at $350 and doing like a 70% value of assessment. And she said her software, it would be a nightmare.
Well, I mean, if we pass the savings along to them for just 1 year, at least it was a savings for 1 year.
Yeah, because at some point the value of those vehicles is going to drop, and it'll probably drop as significantly as it went up. You would think, when things start to become more available. I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We're going to have to come up with a solution. It just seems easier that this is. To me, seems almost like a temporary situation.
It is.
So let's come up with a temporary fix that, down the road fixes itself.
Mr. Hathaway go ahead, Ms. Page.
I'm quite sure there are at least two other localities they have entertained a rebate. And people are getting like $63 and $53. They said to get to that, it was a nightmare. I mean, everybody, and the only reason that legislation allowed the opportunity to do it is because it's a 1 year thing, and because even they realize that this year is an unprecedented year. I mean, I never thought my 2000 would be valued at so much, but I mean, it's like we've never seen it before. And so, they're working on it. But the only reason is they've already passed their budget. They passed their budget almost a month ago. Mm-hmm. And so now they're trying to figure out, what to do with this and how to fix it. So we got the opportunity to make the decision before we vote on it. Can we do a percentage versus,
No, that's what she said.
It has to be a whole number.
We're at we were at 375.
375.
And we're looking at going to 350 for boats and campers.
325.
325. Right. And $3 for
cars.
And with that, where does that put us in surrounding carriers? That would at $3 that puts us the lowest.
At $3 in the Richmond region, that puts us as the lowest. Gloucester, who's not in the Richmond region, I believe they're $2.98, something like that. Also, Middlesex is like $2.90 something too. But in the Richmond region, we'd be the lowest.
But I guess I need to get the feel from the board, and I'm not saying, I don't know how each and everyone feels, but if we could get to 325 and keep it at 67 cents, so we got $3 and put it at 68 cents, I mean, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul at the end of the day.
That's
So,
what I said earlier. I mean,
So,
citizens are not stupid, you know. They're gonna say, well, yeah, you lowered my car tax, but you raised my real estate tax.
so at 325, where would that put us roughly? I know you don't have, I know you're looking at numbers. Would that put the schools roughly at 67 cents? Would that put them at closer to 1.8? It's not like we got to make a decision tonight.
I can run those numbers.
It's got to get us closer.
Yeah, it will definitely get us closer. And I have that number, what each penny, the value of each penny on the personal property tax, and I apologize.
No.
I don't know if it's because it's late. I can't think of it. But
we don't have to make a decision tonight. We're just doing different scenarios.
We can easily run that scenario. Yeah.
I mean, it's up to I don't know what the board thinks. So that just gives another option.
So you're looking at 67
Well,
and going with a 325.
I don't know if that's an option or not.
If it kind of gets us to the same.
Either
number.
way, if we go to 68.
Same number. Yeah. All total.
Yeah, we can get to the same numbers with what he's presented.
And then we won't have, if we have to, it might not make us look as bad next year if we have to, because I agree with Mr. Lockwood. I think car prices are going to go down and might not be quite as much, to come up with the following year. But it's just an option.
Yeah, we can definitely look at that.
Moving right along.
You have something, Mr. Steers?
I'd like to go on to our next public hearing.
Yes, sir.
If there was no more discussion.
All right, last public hearing this evening. Proposed FY23 New Kent County Public Utilities Budget. Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you. The public utilities budget totals $9,635,584. It is an increase from the current fiscal year of roughly $1.5 million. We are proposing no changes in water and sewer rates, no changes in connection and availability fees. We are proposing a 5-cent reduction in the Bottoms Bridge service tax district rate, which would bring it from 10 cents to 5 cents. And the $9.6 million budget involves capital projects totaling $3.3 million.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hathaway. Open the public hearing. Close the public hearing. No one signed up. Any comments or questions for Mr. Hathaway?
Can we just stick around for a little while longer?
No, you can. You might need to. Yeah. All right.
Straight cars.
All right. I know it's getting late. Our next meeting schedule of the Board of Supervisors will be held at 6 p.m. on Monday, June 13th, 2022, and the next work session at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, May 25th, 2022, both in the boardroom of the County Administration Building. No other discussion. I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Tiller, Ms. Watkins, will you poll the members?
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Adjourned.